I'm Zachary Harrison, 34 years old, and I still remember the sting when my parents called me a weird computer nerd. Throughout my childhood, they were convinced I was wasting my life, while my brother Ryan basked in their approval. For years, I worked silently building something they couldn't understand or appreciate. Then came that fateful night at Ryan's engagement dinner, when his fiancée Amanda looked at me with widening eyes and said those words that changed everything. "You're the $300 million CEO we just acquired." Before I dive into my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever been underestimated by the people who should have believed in you the most. Trust me, what happened next at that dinner table will make it worth your while. My journey with computers began when I was 8 years old. Our neighbor was having a garage sale, and among the discarded items was an old desktop computer. It was practically ancient, even for the late 90s, but something about it fascinated me. I begged my parents to buy it, promising I'd mow lawns all summer to pay them back the $40. "What do you even want that junk for?" my father asked, shaking his head. But he relented, probably thinking I'd get bored with it within a week. That computer became my entire world. It didn't work at first, but I was determined. I borrowed books from the library, spent hours online at school researching computer repairs, and eventually fixed it myself. The pride I felt when that screen finally flickered to life was indescribable. My parents didn't share my excitement. "Great, now you can play your games," my father said dismissively. He didn't understand that I wasn't interested in just playing games. I wanted to make them, create them, understand how they worked. While I spent hours learning basic programming, my younger brother Ryan was becoming the star of his Little League team. My parents never missed his games. They cheered from the bleachers, took dozens of photos, and proudly displayed his trophies on the mantle. When I tried showing them a simple program, I'd written a basic calculator. My mother glanced at it for 2 seconds before saying, "That's nice, Zachary. Did you finish your homework?" By the time I was 11, I had taught myself several programming languages and was creating simple games. I'd show my creations to my parents, hoping for just a flicker of the enthusiasm they showed for Ryan's home runs. "Isn't it time you got outside more?" my mother would say. "All this computer stuff isn't healthy. Look at your brother, he's making real friends and getting exercise." In 6th grade, I entered my first technology competition. I spent weeks perfecting a program that could solve mathematical equations. The night before the competition, I asked my parents if they would come. "We have to attend Ryan's baseball game," my father said without hesitation. "It's the semifinals." I won first place at that competition. The judge, a software engineer from a local company, told me I had exceptional talent for my age. When I got home trophy in hand, my parents were celebrating Ryan's team's victory. "I won too," I said, holding up my trophy. "That's nice," my mother said, giving me a quick pat on the shoulder. "But can you believe Ryan scored the winning run?" That evening, I heard my father on the phone with my uncle. "Yeah, Zachary won some computer thing. It's nice, I guess, but not a real achievement like sports. Just playing around with keyboards." Those words cut deep. I went to my room, placed my trophy on my desk, and made a silent promise to myself that someday they would understand that my passion wasn't just playing around, it was my future. Middle school was a time of further rejection at home, but growing confidence in my abilities. I found solace in online communities and forums where other young programmers shared their work. There, I wasn't the weird kid obsessed with computers. I was respected, even admired for my skills. One user named Codemaster became a virtual mentor to me. When I shared my parents' dismissal of my interests, he wrote back, "Some people won't understand what we do until we change the world with it. Keep building." Those words became my mantra through the coldest days of parental disapproval. I printed them out and taped them above my desk, a daily reminder that somewhere, someone believed in what I was doing. By the time I finished middle school, I had created several functional programs and was selling simple websites to local businesses. I put every dollar I earned into better equipment. While my parents spent thousands on Ryan's sports camps and equipment, I funded my own passion with determination and hard work. It's just a phase, I overheard my mother telling her friend on the phone. He'll grow out of this computer obsession eventually and find something real to do with his life. I didn't know then how wrong she would be, how this phase would shape my entire future, and how years later it would lead to a moment that would leave my entire family speechless. High school only widened the gap between my parents' perception of me and who I really was, while Ryan became the star quarterback of the football team as a freshman. I joined the computer club and quickly became its president. I volunteered to rebuild the school's outdated website, spending countless hours creating something modern and functional. When the principal unveiled the new website at a school assembly, I was called to the stage to be recognized for my contribution. It was one of the first times I'd received public acknowledgement for my skills, and I scanned the audience, hoping against hope to see my parents there. They had been invited, but their seats remained empty. They were at Ryan's football practice. That night at dinner, I mentioned the assembly. "Oh, was that today?" my mother asked, serving mashed potatoes. "Sorry, honey." Ryan's coach wanted to talk to us about college scouts already showing interest. "Isn't that amazing? He's only a freshman." "The principal said my website design could win state recognition," I said quietly. My father glanced up briefly from his plate. "That's nice, son. But let's be realistic, it's just a website. Not like it's going to get you a scholarship like Ryan's football might." Later that week, I overheard my mother at her bridge club in our living room. "Zachary is so smart, but he's wasting his potential on computer games," she told her friends with a sigh. "We're hoping it's just a phase. His brother is the real achiever, already being scouted for college sports scholarships." The casual dismissal stung, but it also hardened my resolve. If they couldn't see the value in what I was doing, I would find people who did. By sophomore year, I had started my first real business venture, fixing computers for neighbors and teachers. Word spread quickly about the computer whiz kid who could solve problems for half what repair shops charged. I started making decent money, several $100s a month, which I saved religiously. When my father saw me counting my earnings one evening, he seemed surprised. "Where did that money come from?" "My computer repair business," I answered, hoping for approval at last. He frowned slightly. "Tinkering with computers isn't a real business, Zachary. It's just odd jobs. You should get a proper part-time job like normal teenagers." No matter what I achieved, it was never enough, never real in their eyes. Junior year brought career day and the inevitable confrontation about my future. The computer science teacher, Mr. Bayuk Patel, had become something of a mentor to me, encouraging my skills and even teaching me advanced concepts after school. He suggested I look into top computer science programs for college. When I broached the subject at dinner, my parents exchanged that look I'd grown to dread. "Computers are a fine hobby, Zachary." My mother began carefully. "But have you considered more stable career paths? Law? Or medicine, perhaps? Your grades are certainly good enough." "I don't want to be a lawyer or doctor," I replied. "I want to build software. Create things that could help millions of people." My father set down his fork. "Those tech startups are 1 in a million success stories. The rest fail. We just want what's best for you. A stable, respectable career." They couldn't see that technology was reshaping the world right before their eyes, that the skills I was developing were valuable, marketable, and increasingly in demand. Senior year marked a turning point. I built my first truly successful app, a program that helped local businesses manage their inventory more efficiently. Several store owners in our town began using it, and I started earning consistent monthly revenue from subscription fees. Mr. Patel was impressed. "This is exceptional work, Zachary. You're already doing what most of my former students do after college." I applied to several top computer science programs, earning acceptance to most of them. My parents seemed surprised but still skeptical. "Computer science," my father said, reading one acceptance letter. "Well, I suppose that's better than nothing. At least it's a real degree." The backhanded compliment was typical. Meanwhile, Ryan's recruitment to play football at a Division I school was celebrated with a huge party. Relatives flew in from across the country. My college acceptances warranted a simple nod and a reminder to apply for financial aid. The divide in our family had never been clearer. I was the strange computer-obsessed son who might someday have an acceptable career if I was lucky. Ryan was the golden child, with a bright future ahead of him. I packed for college with mixed emotions, excitement for the freedom ahead, but sadness that I'd never managed to make my parents understand or appreciate my passion. I didn't realize then that my journey was just beginning, and that the real challenges and triumphs were still to come. I arrived at Tech University on a partial scholarship, having cobbled together the rest of my tuition through my savings and student loans. My parents drove me to campus, but the car ride was filled with tension and unsolicited advice. "At least try to make some normal friends," my mother said as we unpacked the car. "Join a club that doesn't involve computers. And keep your grades up," my father added. "If you're finally applying yourself to something, do it properly." Even their well wishes felt like criticisms. But as they drove away, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who spoke my language, who understood my passion, who didn't think coding until 3 a.m. was weird or wasteful. My roommate, Jake, was a computer engineering major with a side interest in graphic design. We clicked immediately, staying up all night discussing the future of technology and potential startup ideas. In our sophomore year, we met Sophia in an advanced programming class. She was brilliant with a keen mind for business strategy that complemented our technical skills. College was transformative. Professors valued the very traits my parents had dismissed: my obsession with details, my willingness to solve problems for hours on end, my creative approach to coding challenges. For once, I wasn't the odd one out. I was exactly where I belonged. I called home less and less frequently. Conversations with my parents inevitably circled back to Ryan's football accomplishments or subtle digs about whether I was still doing that computer thing. My father seemed perpetually worried that I would end up unemployable despite all evidence to the contrary. During my junior year, Jake, Sophia, and I began working on our first serious startup idea, a platform that helped small businesses leverage artificial intelligence for customer service. We worked on it between classes, during weekends, through holidays. The prototype showed promise, and a professor with connections to venture capitalists encouraged us to pursue it further. When I went home for Christmas that year, my parents' house was decorated with photos of Ryan in his football uniform. He'd been having a stellar college career, and scouts from professional teams were starting to take notice. "So, how are your computer classes going?" my mother asked over dinner in the same tone she might inquire about a hobby. "Actually, I'm working on a startup with 2 friends," I explained, trying to contain my excitement. "We've built a prototype that's getting good feedback, and Professor Bernstein thinks we might be able to secure seed funding." My father looked up from carving the turkey. "A startup? You mean like those garage businesses that fail within a year? Zachary, be serious about your future." "This is serious," I insisted. "The technology we're developing could revolutionize how small businesses interact with their customers." He set down the carving knife. "You know what they say about startups, right? 9 out of 10 fail. It's playing the lottery with your career." "It's not a lottery if you have the skills and vision to execute," I countered. "You'll fail anyway," he said dismissively. "It's just a phase you're going through." Graduate, get a stable job at an established company, and eventually you'll thank us for the advice. That night, I lay awake in my childhood bedroom surrounded by the few computing trophies I'd accumulated that my parents had reluctantly allowed me to display. The dismissal hurt, but something had changed in me. I no longer desperately craved their approval. I believed in what we were building, whether they understood it or not. Back at university, our project gained momentum. We entered a startup competition and placed second, earning $10,000 in prize money and valuable connections. A small angel investor expressed interest, and suddenly our side project began to feel like a real company with potential. As senior year approached, Jake, Sophia, and I faced a decision. The traditional path would be to graduate, perhaps pursue master's degrees, and enter the workforce. But our startup was gaining traction, and every day spent in classes felt like time wasted on our vision. After much deliberation, I made the hardest call of my life. I decided to drop out with just one semester remaining before graduation. Jake and Sophia soon followed suit. We were all in on our company. Telling my parents was as difficult as I'd imagined. I called on a Sunday evening, knowing they'd both be home. "You're what?" my father exploded when I explained my decision. "Throwing away your education. After all we've sacrificed." "I'm not throwing anything away," I tried to explain. "This is an opportunity that won't wait. We have investors interested now." "Investors?" he scoffed. "So some fools are willing to gamble on your little computer project. That doesn't make it a wise career move." My mother got on the line, her voice tight with disappointment. "Zachary, please reconsider. Just finish your degree as a backup plan." "I don't need a backup plan," I said, with more confidence than I felt. "I need to focus completely on this company. It's what I was born to do." The argument escalated quickly. My father called me irresponsible, ungrateful, delusional. My mother cried and pleaded. And then came the ultimatum. "If you do this," my father said coldly, "you're on your own. No more tuition money, no fallback support if it fails. Nothing." "I understand," I replied, my voice steady, despite the turmoil inside. "You're ruining your life," were his parting words before hanging up. That night I moved out of university housing and into a tiny apartment with Jake and 2 other roommates to save on rent. Sophia moved in with her cousin nearby. We converted our living room into a makeshift office, working around the clock to build our company while surviving on ramen noodles and coffee. The severance from my parents was nearly complete. They had made it clear I had chosen my path, and it wasn't one they respected or supported. All I had now was my belief in myself, my co-founders, and the vision we shared. I didn't know then that this painful separation was just the beginning of a journey that would eventually lead to that fateful dinner years later, the night when everything would change. The first year after dropping out was the hardest of my life. Jake, Sophia, and I worked 18-hour days in our cramped apartment. We subsisted on the cheapest food possible, sometimes skipping meals to save money. Every dollar we had went back into the business. Our furniture consisted of salvaged items from dumpsters and curbsides. I slept on a mattress on the floor, my laptop often beside me so I could resume coding the moment I woke up. We showered at the local gym, where we had the cheapest possible membership, mainly to use their facilities rather than for exercise. "Are you sure we're not crazy?" Jake asked one night after we'd been coding for 16 hours straight. His eyes were bloodshot, his 5th coffee of the night going cold beside him. "Maybe," I admitted. "But I'd rather be crazy than wonder what if for the rest of my life." Sophia, ever the pragmatist, kept us focused. "The prototype is almost ready. Once we have a working demo, things will change." She was right. 3 months of nonstop work led to a breakthrough in our AI algorithm that made our product not just functional, but exceptional. Our platform could now predict customer needs with uncanny accuracy, allowing small businesses to provide personalized service at scale. We created a demo and began cold emailing potential clients. For every 100 emails, we might get one response. For every 10 responses, we might get one meeting. For every 5 meetings, we might get one client willing to try our beta product for free. It was grueling, thankless work with more rejection than success. But slowly we built a small user base of businesses willing to test our software and provide feedback. During this time, my communication with my parents dwindled to almost nothing. Occasional terse phone calls on birthdays or holidays, always ending with some variation of "it's not too late to go back to school." I stopped telling them about the business. They had made it clear they didn't believe in it. Ryan surprisingly maintained contact. He'd been drafted to a professional football team as a backup quarterback and was doing well. Unlike our parents, he seemed genuinely curious about my company, even if he didn't fully understand what we did. "Mom and Dad talk about you. You know," he told me during one phone call. "They worry." "They don't need to," I replied. "I'm doing fine." "Are you really?" His concern seemed genuine. I looked around our shabby apartment at the empty ramen cups and the whiteboards covered in code. Not yet. But I will be. Our breakthrough came 9 months in, when a mid-sized retail chain agreed to implement our system across their 27 stores. It was our first paying client, bringing in enough monthly revenue to cover our minimal living expenses and server costs. That single client led to others. Word began to spread about the small tech company with the AI customer service solution that actually worked. By the end of our first year, we had 10 clients and had hired 2 additional developers, former classmates who believed in our vision enough to accept below-market salaries. We moved into a real office space, nothing fancy, just a converted warehouse with enough room for our growing team. We bought actual desks. We ate real food occasionally. Small victories, but they felt monumental. 18 months after dropping out, we secured our first serious funding, $2 million in Series A investment, from a venture capital firm that specialized in AI startups. The day the money hit our bank account, I called my parents thinking, surely now they would understand this wasn't just a phase. "That's wonderful, Zachary," my mother said, sounding genuinely pleased for the first time. "Does this mean you'll have a stable income now?" "It means we can scale the company," I explained. "Hire more people, improve the product, acquire more clients." "But it's not your money," my father interjected. "It's investor money. They're gambling on you. It's not real success yet." Even this milestone wasn't enough. In their eyes, I was still playing a game, not building a career. After that call, I threw myself even more intensely into the business. We expanded to a team of 15, moved to a better office, and improved our product. Our client base grew to over 50 companies, with a waiting list forming as positive testimonials spread. 2.5 years in, we found ourselves in meetings with one of the largest retail corporations in the country. They were intrigued by our technology and wanted to implement it across their thousands of locations and online platforms. The potential deal was massive, large enough to transform our company overnight. We spent weeks preparing our presentation, refining our demo, and negotiating terms. The pressure was immense. This was the opportunity we had been working toward. The day of the final meeting, I put on the only suit I owned now, slightly too big after years of stress and irregular meals. Sophia and Jake looked equally nervous as we entered the corporate headquarters. 4 hours later, we walked out with a signed contract. The retail giant was not only implementing our system across their entire operation, but paying a substantial upfront fee for the privilege. That night, for the first time in years, we celebrated properly. We took the whole team out to a nice restaurant, ordered champagne, and toasted to the future. "We did it," Jake said, raising his glass. "We actually did it." Sophia, usually so composed, had tears in her eyes. This is just the beginning. I felt a complex mix of emotions, pride, relief, vindication, and a lingering sadness that the people who should have believed in me first never did. I wondered if they ever would, or if that even mattered anymore. As our company grew, so did my personal success. I was able to buy my first home. Nothing ostentatious, but a modern condo in a good neighborhood. I replaced my decade-old car with a new one. I could afford good clothes, decent restaurants, even occasional vacations. 3 years after our life-changing deal, I attempted reconciliation with my parents. I invited them to dinner at an upscale restaurant in their city. They seemed shocked by my appearance. I had finally gained back the weight I'd lost. During those lean years, wore a tailored suit and carried myself with the confidence of someone who had proven his worth. "You look good," my mother said, sounding surprised. "The business must be going well." "It is," I replied. "We have over 200 employees now. Offices in 3 cities. My father nodded slowly. "You got lucky with that big client. Sometimes these tech bubbles work out for a few people." "It wasn't luck," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "It was thousands of hours of work creating something valuable." "Well, not everyone can strike it rich with computer games," he said dismissively. "Ryan's doing well too, you know. Just been signed for another 2 years." Even now, with all I had achieved, they couldn't acknowledge the legitimacy of my path. My success was lucky, or temporary, while Ryan's was earned and real. As we finished dinner, my mother mentioned that Ryan had big news. He's engaged to a lovely girl named Amanda. She works in acquisitions for some big tech company. They're having an engagement dinner next month. He'd love for you to be there. I hesitated. Family gatherings were still uncomfortable with my parents' lingering disappointment and inability to understand my work. But Ryan had always tried to maintain our relationship, even when I was at my lowest. "I'll be there," I promised. What I didn't know then was that this engagement dinner would become the setting for a revelation that would finally force my parents to see me clearly for perhaps the first time in my life. In the weeks leading up to the dinner, our company entered preliminary acquisition talks with one of the largest tech conglomerates in the world. They were interested in our AI technology and customer base, and the initial valuation they proposed was staggering $300 million. The negotiations were intense and highly confidential. Only our executive team and the board knew the details. I hadn't mentioned it to anyone in my family, partly due to confidentiality agreements, and partly because I'd grown accustomed to keeping my professional life separate from my family. As the engagement dinner approached, so did the finalization of the acquisition deal. The tech giant's acquisition team had completed their due diligence, and we were moving toward final terms. Little did I know that these 2 separate parts of my life were about to collide in the most unexpected way. The months following our major retail deal transformed our company completely. Our staff grew to 50 employees within a year, then 100. The next, we moved into proper corporate offices in a downtown high-rise, complete with the stereotypical startup perks, game rooms, free lunches, and open collaborative spaces. Our technology continued to evolve, becoming more sophisticated and valuable. Small businesses were no longer our only clients. Major corporations across various industries began implementing our AI solutions. Our annual revenue multiplied exponentially, and profitability followed. 18 months after the retail deal, we secured Series B funding $25 million to accelerate our growth even further. The investment was led by a prestigious venture capital firm that rarely backed companies outside Silicon Valley, making their interest in our Midwestern startup all the more validating. With the new funding came media attention. Tech publications began writing about our overnight success, conveniently ignoring the years of struggle preceding it. I gave my first interviews, appeared on industry panels, and reluctantly stepped into the role of company spokesperson. "You're becoming a tech celebrity," Jake joked after I was featured in a major business magazine. "Hardly," I replied. "Nobody outside the tech world has any idea who I am. That was by design." I maintained a low public profile, rarely using social media, and declining most public speaking engagements that weren't directly beneficial to the company. The work was what mattered, not personal recognition. Our company valuation reached $100 million on paper. I remembered the days of eating ramen in our rundown apartment, wondering if we'd make rent, and the contrast was surreal. Success hadn't changed my work ethic. I still put in long hours, but it had changed almost everything else about my life. I bought a house, nothing flashy, but comfortable and modern. I replaced my beaten-up old car with a new luxury sedan. I could afford good clothes, fine restaurants, and occasional vacations, though I rarely took time off. 5 years after dropping out of college, I decided to try once more to bridge the gap with my parents. Despite our success, our relationship remained strained. They still referred to my work as my computer job and seemed unable to grasp what the company actually did or the scale of its success. I invited them to dinner at an upscale restaurant near their home. They arrived, looking slightly uncomfortable in the elegant setting. "This place is expensive," my father commented as we sat down. "Your company must be doing okay." "We're doing well," I replied, trying to stay positive. "We have over 200 employees now, offices in 3 cities. The technology we've developed is being used by millions of people every day." My mother nodded politely. "That's nice, dear. Is it a stable business now?" "We still worry." "It's very stable," I assured her. "We're profitable, growing, and there's increasing demand for what we do." My father swirled his wine thoughtfully. "You got lucky with that big client a few years back. Sometimes these tech bubbles work out for a few people." I took a deep breath. "It wasn't luck, Dad. It was thousands of hours of work, creating something valuable that solved real problems." "Well," he shrugged, "not everyone can strike it rich with computer games. Ryan's doing well too, you know. Just been signed for another 2 years with his team." The comparison to Ryan was inevitable. No matter what I achieved, their frame of reference remained unchanged. My success was lucky or temporary, while Ryan's was earned and real. As we finished dinner, my mother brightened. "Speaking of Ryan, he has some wonderful news. He's engaged to a lovely girl named Amanda. She works in acquisitions for some big tech company. I can never remember the name, they all sound the same to me. They're having an engagement dinner next month. He'd love for you to be there." I hesitated. Family gatherings were still uncomfortable with my parents' lingering disappointment and inability to understand my work. But Ryan had always tried to maintain our relationship, even when I was at my lowest. "I'll be there," I promised. In the weeks between that dinner and Ryan's engagement celebration, our company entered discussions that would transform it completely. A major tech conglomerate, one of the Big Five, expressed interest in acquiring us. Initially, I was skeptical. We were on a strong growth trajectory and hadn't been looking to sell. But their initial offer was compelling, $300 million, with our team remaining intact and our technology becoming a cornerstone of their customer experience platform. More importantly, they offered resources and reach that would take us years to build independently. After intense discussions with Jake, Sophia, and our board, we decided to entertain the acquisition. Due diligence began with teams of lawyers and accountants poring over our financials, technology, and operations. The process was exhausting but exhilarating. As the acquisition talks progressed, so did the company's growth. We expanded to 250 employees. Our valuation, independent of the acquisition offer, reached $250 million. Industry analysts began listing us among the most promising AI startups globally. Through it all, I maintained the separation between my professional success and my family relationships. My parents knew I ran a computer company but had no concept of its scale or significance. I'd grown tired of trying to make them understand or seeking their approval. The night before Ryan's engagement dinner, I received a call from our lawyers. The acquisition was moving forward, with final terms being drawn up. The valuation had increased to $300 million based on our recent performance. The news should have been exhilarating, but I felt strangely numb. Professional validation meant less when the people who raised you still saw you as a disappointment. As I prepared for the dinner the next evening, I felt the familiar anxiety that accompanied family gatherings. I chose a conservative suit, nothing too flashy, and drove to the upscale restaurant where Ryan and his fiancée had reserved a private dining room. I arrived early, taking a moment in the parking lot to compose myself. Success had given me confidence in every area of my life, except this one. Around my parents, I still felt like the misunderstood teenager whose accomplishments were never quite good enough. Little did I know that this dinner would change everything, not because I would finally prove myself to my parents, but because fate had a twist in store that none of us could have anticipated. The restaurant was one of those upscale steakhouses with dark wood paneling and discreet lighting, the kind of place where business deals are closed over expensive bottles of wine. I straightened my tie in the reflection of the glass door before entering, trying to quell the familiar anxiety that surfaced whenever I faced my family. The hostess led me to a private dining room where my parents were already seated, along with Ryan and a woman I assumed was Amanda. My mother waved eagerly when she saw me. "Zachary, you're here. Come meet Amanda." I stepped forward, extending my hand. "Congratulations to both of you. It's nice to finally meet you, Amanda." Amanda was attractive and professional-looking, with shoulder-length brown hair and intelligent eyes. She smiled as she shook my hand. "Ryan has told me so much about you. It's great to finally put a face to the name." "All good things, I hope," I said, taking the empty seat across from her. "Of course," Ryan interjected. "I was just telling Amanda about the time you hacked the school's announcement system to play the Star Wars theme on the last day of school." My mother shook her head. "Always with the computer pranks. We were worried he'd get expelled." My father laughed. "Remember how the principal called us and thought Zachary might have a future in computer security if he applied himself properly? As if playing with computers was a real career path." I felt the familiar sting but forced a smile. Some things never changed. "So Amanda," I said, changing the subject, "Ryan mentioned, you work in acquisitions. What does that involve?" Before Amanda could answer, my mother jumped in. "She works for one of those big technology companies." "Very impressive position." "Which company?" I asked, genuinely curious. Amanda named the tech giant that was currently in the process of acquiring my company. I felt a small jolt of surprise, but assumed it was a coincidence. The company employed tens of thousands of people worldwide. "That's a great company," I said neutrally. "What department are you in?" "I lead the strategic acquisitions team for AI and machine learning technologies," she replied. "It's a fascinating field." Now that was an interesting coincidence. I maintained my poker face, not wanting to reveal anything about our ongoing negotiations. "Zachary has a computer business too," my father said dismissively. "Some kind of software thing." Amanda turned to me with professional interest. "Oh, what kind of software?" Before I could answer, my mother interrupted. "Let's not bore Amanda with all that technical talk. Ryan, tell everyone about the new contract you're negotiating." Ryan launched into a story about his football career, but I noticed Amanda was still looking at me with curiosity. When there was a lull in the conversation, she directed another question my way. "What's the name of your company, Zachary?" I told her. Her fork clattered against her plate. She stared at me, her expression shifting from curiosity to shock. "You're Zachary Harrison?" she asked, her voice suddenly tense. Yes, I confirmed, puzzled by her reaction. She studied my face more intently. The founder and CEO of... I nodded, increasingly uncomfortable with the direction this was taking. Amanda's face went pale. You're the $300 million CEO we just acquired. The table fell silent. My parents froze forks midway to their mouths. Ryan looked between Amanda and me in confusion. Wait, what, he asked. What does that mean, acquired? Amanda was still staring at me. I'm leading the acquisition team for your company. We've been in negotiations for weeks. I've reviewed all your financials, your technology patents, your client list. I never made the connection that you were Ryan's brother. The deal is being announced next week. My father set down his glass with a thud. Acquisition. $300 million. What is she talking about, Zachary? For a moment I couldn't speak. The professional world I'd built, where I was respected and valued, had just collided with my family life, where I'd always been the misunderstood disappointment. The company I founded is being acquired, I said finally. The deal closes next week. For $300 million, my mother asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded. That's the valuation, yes. But your computer hobby, my father began, then trailed off. Amanda had recovered some of her composure. Mr. and Mrs. Harrison, your son's company, is considered one of the most innovative AI firms in the country. The technology they've developed is revolutionary. That's why we're acquiring them. She turned to me. I've been studying your company for months. Your AI algorithms are years ahead of competitors. The entire acquisition committee is impressed with what you've built. My parents looked shell-shocked. Ryan was the first to break into a genuine smile. Dude, why didn't you tell us? This is incredible. I've tried telling you about the company for years, I said quietly. None of you ever seemed interested. My mother's eyes filled with tears. We didn't understand. We thought. I don't know what we thought. You thought I was wasting my potential on computer games. I reminded her the words she'd spoken to her bridge club, still fresh in my memory. After all these years, she had the grace to look ashamed. I said that, didn't I? I'm so sorry, Zachary. I just didn't understand what you were doing. My father sat in uncharacteristic silence, his expression unreadable. Amanda looked uncomfortable, clearly realizing she'd stumbled into family drama. I apologize if I spoke out of turn. I was just so surprised. We're very excited about the acquisition. Your team has built something truly special. Ryan reached across the table to grasp my shoulder. I always knew you were smart, bro, but this is next level. I'm proud of you. His words, simple and sincere, meant more than he could know. My father finally spoke, his voice strained. $300 million. For your computer. For your company. The company I dropped out of college to build, I said pointedly. The one you said would fail anyway. The one Mom told her bridge club was just me playing games. The uncomfortable silence stretched. My mother attempted to recover her voice, artificially bright. Well, we always knew you would succeed eventually, Zachary. You were always so smart. The revisionist history was too much. No, you didn't, I said firmly. You never believed in me or what I was building. Not once. The truth hung heavy in the air. Amanda cleared her throat awkwardly. Perhaps I should give your family some privacy, she suggested, moving to stand. No, I said, rising from my chair instead. This is your engagement dinner. I'm the one who should go. Ryan protested, but I was already pulling out my wallet, placing several $100 bills on the table. Dinner's on me. Congratulations on your engagement. Amanda, I'm sure I'll be seeing you in the office next week. And with that, I walked out, emotions churning inside me. After all these years, my parents finally knew the truth about what I'd built, not through my efforts to explain it to them, but through a coincidence that couldn't have been scripted better by a Hollywood writer. As I drove home, I felt neither triumph nor vindication, just a hollow sadness for all the years of misunderstanding and missed connections. The question now was whether this revelation would change anything, and whether after all this time I even wanted it to. I spent the days after the engagement dinner in a strange emotional limbo. Professional triumph contrasted sharply with personal turmoil. The acquisition was moving forward smoothly, with final paperwork being prepared and announcements scheduled. But my thoughts kept returning to the shocked expressions on my parents' faces, the sudden realization in their eyes that they had fundamentally misunderstood who I was and what I had accomplished. 3 days after the dinner, Amanda called me. "I want to apologize," she said immediately. "I had no idea about the situation with your family. I would never have put you in that position intentionally." "It's not your fault," I assured her. "You couldn't have known. And maybe it's better this way, everything out in the open." "Ryan feels terrible," she continued. "He says he knew you were doing well, but had no concept of the scale. He's worried you're upset with him too." "I'm not," I said truthfully. "Ryan always supported me in his own way. He just didn't understand what I was building either." We spoke briefly about the acquisition before ending the call. Amanda was professional and clearly good at her job. I could see why the tech giant had her leading acquisitions. I could also see why Ryan had fallen for her. She was sharp, direct, and seemed genuinely caring. The acquisition was finalized the following week. The press release went out on a Tuesday morning, and by afternoon my phone was flooded with congratulatory messages, interview requests, and inevitably calls from distant relatives who suddenly remembered my existence. My parents didn't call. After the initial announcement, life became a whirlwind. The acquisition meant I was now technically an executive at one of the world's largest tech companies, with significant wealth on paper and new responsibilities. Jake, Sophia, and I spent countless hours ensuring the transition went smoothly for our team. 2 weeks after the news broke, Ryan showed up at my office unannounced. "Nice digs," he said, looking around at the modern space with its floor-to-ceiling windows and open design. "So this is where the magic happens." "Something like that," I replied, surprised but pleased to see him. "What brings you here?" "Wanted to see my brother in his natural habitat." He grinned then. His expression turned more serious. "And to talk about Mom and Dad." I gestured toward the couch in my office, and we both sat down. "They're a mess, Zach," he said bluntly. "Dad hasn't been sleeping. Mom keeps pulling out old photo albums, looking at pictures of you as a kid with your computers. They realize how badly they misjudged you, and they don't know how to make it right." "It's not about making it right," I said. "It's about understanding why it happened in the first place. Why couldn't they see me for who I actually was? Why was what I cared about always less valuable than what you cared about?" Ryan winced. "That's fair. And I'm sorry too for not realizing how that felt for you. I was so caught up in my own stuff." "You were a kid too," I pointed out. "It wasn't your responsibility." Still, he insisted I should have paid more attention. "All those years you were building something incredible, and I barely asked you about it." He paused. "Would you be willing to talk to them? They want to apologize, but don't know if you'd even take their call." I considered his request. Part of me wanted to say no to protect myself from further disappointment. But another part recognized that holding on to resentment would only continue the cycle of pain. "I'll think about it," I promised. A week later, I invited my parents to meet at a neutral location, a quiet cafe near my office. They arrived early, both looking nervous and aged somehow, as if the revelation had physically affected them. My father, always confident and sometimes domineering, seemed diminished. My mother's eyes were anxious, searching my face for clues about my feelings. After ordering coffee, an uncomfortable silence settled over the table. Finally, my father cleared his throat. "Zachary, I don't know where to begin," he said, his voice rougher than usual. I was wrong. So wrong about everything. The simple admission, something I'd never heard from him before, caught me off guard. "We didn't understand what you were doing," my mother added. "We thought." I don't know what we thought. That computers were just games, or a hobby. Not a real career. Not something that could change the world. "You never tried to understand," I pointed out. "Every time I talked about my work, you changed the subject, or compared it unfavorably to Ryan's sports." My father winced. "You're right. We had this image in our minds of what success looked like. A doctor, a lawyer, an athlete. We couldn't see that the world was changing, that you were part of building that change. I told you I was creating something valuable," I reminded them. "You said I'd fail anyway." I remember he acknowledged, looking down at his coffee. "Those words have been haunting me. To think I said that to my son, who went on to build a $300 million company. I was so blind." My mother reached across the table, not quite touching my hand, but coming close. "I told my bridge club you were wasting your potential on computer games. The shame I feel now. It's overwhelming." I couldn't have been more wrong. Their apologies seemed genuine, their regret palpable. But years of dismissal and misunderstanding couldn't be erased in a single conversation. "I needed your support," I said quietly. "Not just financial, but emotional. Belief. Especially when things were at their hardest. Do you know what it's like to work 18-hour days, sleep on a mattress on the floor, eat ramen for every meal, all while knowing your parents think you're wasting your life?" Tears welled in my mother's eyes. "No, I can't imagine. And I'm so sorry we weren't there for you." "What can we do?" my father asked, his usual commanding tone replaced with something approaching humility. "How do we make this right?" "I don't know if you can," I admitted. "But understanding what happened is a start. Recognizing that your narrow definition of success prevented you from seeing the value in what I was passionate about." We talked for over 2 hours, covering painful memories and missed opportunities. There were tears, difficult admissions, and tentative steps toward understanding. It wasn't a magical reconciliation, too much had happened for that, but it was a beginning. I set clear boundaries. Our relationship would need to be rebuilt slowly, with respect for who I actually was, not who they had wished I would be. They agreed, seemingly grateful for any chance to reconnect. In the months that followed, I underwent my own healing journey. With the financial security the acquisition provided, I was able to step back from day-to-day operations and focus on personal growth. I started seeing a therapist to process the years of rejection and its impact on me. I also found purpose in mentoring young tech entrepreneurs, especially those from backgrounds where their interests weren't supported. I established a foundation to provide resources, equipment, and guidance to underprivileged kids interested in technology. My relationship with my parents improved gradually. They made genuine efforts to understand my world, asking questions about technology and listening to the answers. My father even took a basic coding class at the community college, not to become a programmer, but to better comprehend what I had dedicated my life to. 6 months after our cafe conversation, Ryan and Amanda were married. I stood beside my brother, as his best man, delivering a speech that celebrated not just his achievements, but the different paths we had taken to find fulfillment. At the reception, my mother approached me, looking elegant but nervous. "I'm so proud of you," she said, the words I'd waited decades to hear. "Not because of the money or the success, but because you had the courage to follow your heart when everyone, including us, told you not to. That means a lot." I replied, surprised by how much I still craved her approval. Despite everything. I have something for you, she continued, pulling a small package from her purse. Inside was a framed photograph of me at age 10, sitting at my first computer face, illuminated by the screen, completely absorbed in creating something. I found this while going through old albums. You were always exactly who you were meant to be. We just couldn't see it. That photo now sits on my desk, a reminder of both where I came from and how far I've traveled. The greatest lesson I've learned through this journey is that validation doesn't need to come from the sources we initially seek it from. Sometimes the people closest to us are the least equipped to recognize our potential or understand our dreams. That doesn't mean we should abandon those dreams. It means we need to find our tribe elsewhere, the people who see what we're building and value it properly. Success didn't change who I was. It simply made visible to others what had always been there. The shy, determined kid who fixed his first computer. The teenager who built websites while his parents attended his brother's games. The college dropout working through the night in a cramped apartment. They were all essential parts of the part quote, becoming the person I am today. If you're watching this and feel misunderstood by those who should support you most, remember your value isn't determined by their ability to see it. Keep building. Keep creating. The right people will recognize what you're doing eventually, even if they're not the people you initially hoped would notice. I'm Zachary Harrison, once dismissed as a weird computer nerd, now recognized as a tech innovator. But more importantly, I'm someone who followed his passion despite every discouragement and found fulfillment in staying true to himself. If my story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. I'd love to hear in the comments below about times you were underestimated but proved the doubters wrong. Share this with someone who needs encouragement to follow their own path, even when others don't understand it. Thank you for listening. And remember, the people who matter will appreciate you for exactly who you are, not who they wish you would be.